in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to the today's In Alliance in Training webinar. This is brought to you by the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Illinois Eastern Community Colleges. It's part of their Competitive Advantage System series. Today, our topic will be what you need to know before you hire your first employee. My name is Todd Tracy, and I will be your host today. Before we get started, let's just look at a couple of housekeeping options for you. We try to keep the webinars as interactive as we possibly can and enjoy answering your questions as they come up. You have a couple of different options. You can actually raise your hand and I can click the audio on, and you can use your laptop or computer's microphone in order to communicate with me, or what is oftentimes better is simply just type your question into the chat box. I will reread that question for the entire audience, and it will give everyone a chance to hear the answer to the questions. We like to keep this as interactive as possible, and it's up to you if you want to ask questions at the beginning or throughout the presentation, or if you would like to wait till the very end. There is time built into the webinar in order to answer questions at the end. It's completely up to you on how that you want to gain the most out of this webinar. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. Just as a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and will be available for viewing later. That information will be sent to you at the conclusion of the webinar. If you have any questions, my name is in front of you, along with a cell phone number and a email if you'd like to ask questions past the webinar. We're assuming today that you are in a small business or represent a small business, and possibly you do not have any employees at this time. You may have people that do work for you per se, maybe as an independent contractor. Today's webinar will be in the full assumption that any people that are doing work for you are full employees of your small business. In front of you, of course, is the IRS 20-factor test. These are 20 questions that you basically ask yourself of people that provide work to you to determine whether or not they are considered to be an employee of the company or an independent contractor. This is just merely a guideline for determining this factor. As I've had legal counsel advise me in the past, if you have a person doing work for you that that it looks like they answer to being an employee in better than half of these 20 questions, then from all practical purposes that person should be considered an employee and not an independent contractor. When you're looking at employee hiring decisions, there's all kinds of things that you need to be concerned about. Of course, one is the legal ramifications of hiring an employee, which we'll go through each of these topics directly throughout this morning's session. There are several costs associated with hiring your first employee, and then of course it's incremental from that point forward with each employee that you hire after that. There's a recruiting process that needs to take place. Of course, then the actual hiring process, and then how you manage that employee or employees at the conclusion of bringing them on board. One of the very first questions that you have to ask yourself is, can you afford your very first employee? As we'll go through this in greater detail, you'll find that wages, though it becomes a substantial part of the cost of the employee, is not all the considerations that you have to have in mind. The taxes that go along with your employee, where it be unemployment taxes, Medicare and Social Security taxes, both from the state and federal point of view. Of course, then, if in the state of Illinois, if you have one employee that works for your company, you are required to have workers' compensation insurance. You have recruitment and training costs that oftentimes go along with are associated with the employee hire. Of course, any benefits, but of course remember that benefits are completely optional for the employee, and it's determined by your company policy and what you want to use as typically as an attractant and retention for employees. Various other payroll costs, in other words, do you have to have a software to monitor your employees? Are you opting to use an outside source such as a bookkeeper or accounting firm in order to monitor your payroll for you and help you, assist you with and of course there would be a cost associated with that. Anytime you bring in a new employee, a lot of times you'll have to bring in new equipment, whether or not that means tools, computers, desks, office equipment, or anything from that point of view, software, licenses, phone data plans. If they have a dedicated phone line, dedicated internet line, or anything to that in that regard, then of course you would have to make that incremental adjustment with each employee that you hire. And then also another consideration is if you have company vehicles. If you add employees as drivers of those company vehicles, your insurance premiums typically will go up. One of the things that we're going to address right off the bat is the legal ramifications of hiring an employee. First off, from the equal employment opportunity laws that are federal guidelines with some are federal laws of the land for hiring and retaining employees, as well as there are some state of Illinois laws that also apply to this, things that you need to be consideration. During the hiring process, retention process, and of course hopefully not, but in some cases it may be in the firing process, you can't use any form of discrimination in justifying whether to hire, not hire, fire, or not fire an employee. And of course, that also applies to job duties. None of these discriminations can be specifically imposed based upon race, gender, pregnancy, national origin, religion, disability, or age. Also in the state of Illinois, it takes it one step further on discrimination and does list marriage, sexual orientation, and weight being a factor that cannot be used in any type of discrimination. Discrimination can be a factor from the very moment that you are introduced to a potential employee of this for the company. One thing that you have to keep in mind is there are questions that you can ask and questions that you can't ask that are often and most often are the reason that discrimination issues come up in the particular interview process. As a for instance, you can't ask, aren't you too old for this job? In other words, you can't ask specifically as to what somebody's age is. Now, on certain resumes, which this becomes a precarious issue, and of course on job applications, sometimes the date of birth comes into play. The factors that you have to make sure that in no way have you inferred or in actuality use that information as for consideration on whether or not to interview, and of course whether or not to hire a potential candidate. You cannot ask, are you disabled in any way, shape, or form? Any physical disabilities that you may view You can draw some attention to that from the point of view that if somebody were to come into your office for the interview, come into your place of business, and they come into a wheelchair, you can always ask them, is there any special needs that you might have based upon being in a wheelchair? But if there's any types of disabilities that are not clear as to what they are, you must not bring any attention to those, and you must not ask any questions about this. Question, have you been arrested? This is something that can easily be addressed if you do a background check, which we highly recommend that you do of all new employees. You don't have to ask at the interview. You just have to require it on the job application. There's a little check mark that says this job will require either a background check, and that includes both criminal, education, employment, that type of thing. And it could be, if they're handling financial information, could be a credit background check also. But those kind of things will come up because of their checking that they are allowing those to take place if they are considered to be a candidate for the job. One of the other key questions that oftentimes gets asked inappropriately is, do you have children? Oftentimes in interviews, this tends to come up from time to time. Just remember that it cannot be used on a basis for hiring. Questions that you should ask is, you can always ask, are you a U.S. citizen or an alien? And if you are an alien, are you legally permitted to work in the United States? You have a right to ask that. Of course, we'll talk about the I-9 here directly. That is a direct question that you're in every right should be able to ask. And can you perform the essential functions of the job with or without accommodation? I like this particular question, and this tends to address if there are any disabilities without specifically asking if there are disabilities that you can't see or are unknown. And of course, lastly, can you work the hours that are required for this position? That a lot of times is where somebody would say, hey, I've got a baby, I have to find babysitters, I'm a single mom, I'm a single parent, whatever might come out in that particular situation, and it may include that they have children. But the answer to the question is yes or no, can they work the hours required to the position, and you base a portion of your consideration of that potential employee on that answer, and that answer alone. So another legal situation that oftentimes doesn't end up in potentially maybe a courtroom situation from the point of being of a law of the land, but it definitely can be an issue where you may hire an employee and lose that employee based upon promises that were not kept. There are two sides of this particular topic depending on the experience level and past hiring practices of employers across the nation. But as to whether or not compensation should be spoken about in the early stages, if at all, or only with the final candidate or some variation in between. It's really up to your own personal judgment call. Sometimes what I like to see when I'm canceling clients and working them with job descriptions and coming up with pay is to look at maybe some pay ranges and or pay scales based upon experience level. Say you're hiring a new employee, your first-time employee that's going to be in sales. You might want to say, well, it's going to have a base salary of $15,000 a year. However, it has a 20% commission rate, on just the most minimal with little to no experience in this particular industry. If you have a higher industry, then both base salary and commission rate are negotiable, and that's always something that you can say. I would always recommend that you look at putting a base into the minimum that you think that you'd be willing to pay for a potential candidate. And of course, the other side of the story is if you set it too low, you may jeopardize the job pool of people that say, I don't want to work for that money, or that's not what I would is acceptable to me, so you might not even get a resume. So it's definitely something that you have to make an internal decision on as to how that you want to state compensation. Another issue with compensation is to put a range saying that I'm going to pay this wage of between $13.50 and $18.50 an hour based upon experience. Of course, what then you're risking is that if you only offer $14.50 an hour, then there may be a potential that you're risking insulting or causing the potential candidate to not feel that you are being considerate of their needs and experience. So again, there's both ways. There's several ways of looking at compensation, but just make sure that whatever promise you make, you are able to keep with the employee. And of course, that goes with any benefits that you offer, working conditions, and company resources. And don't forget, benefits are not just things that you have a direct pay for, like health insurance. It also means time off, access to company vehicles, access to other company resources, that type of thing. And of course, your working conditions. If you state that they're going to be in the office 2 to 3 days a week, and they'll be on the road 2 to 3 days per week, then that's what they need to be. That needs to happen whenever they're on. If they are hired. If they take the job and they're on the road 5 days a week, and they plan their family, plan their work environment and their social environment around what had been told to them, there can be issues. And of course, last but not least is company resources. For new employees, what are they going to have in order to justify their training? What are they going to have at their resources so that they can be better in their particular job? Need to make sure now, with one of the more recent laws that has passed in the last handful of years, is that need to make sure that you do verify if a potential candidate is a legal citizen of this country. You can get the I-9 completed, and you can actually put the information online, which I'll talk about here in a few moments, to get a pretty ready response back as to whether or not the person is a legal candidate for employment in the United States. I've gotten this question time and time again, especially from new business startups. The question is, well, what if I hire somebody that's an illegal alien or an illegal immigrant, and I didn't know about it? Well, you will not be charged or fined in the state of Illinois if that happens. And just a couple of considerations. One, you do have to have the I-9 completed. You do have to do the background check to verify that they are eligible for employment. And secondly, you do need to keep the I-9 on file for 3 years so that that it is readily available. It is recommended not only by the IRS, Homeland Security, but also by just common employment practices, to keep the I-9 forms in a separate file altogether, and do not keep those in employee files. Keep an I-9 file for each employee that you have. Okay, if you're going to be considering hiring underage workers, I get this a lot, especially at startup restaurants. We've got people that we want, kids that are wanting to apply, and what are the issues associated with that? Well, what is in front of you are the employing youth under the age of 18 in the state of Illinois guidelines. Of course, if they're 18 or older, they're willing to, and they're capable, and they meet all the other guidelines. They can perform any job, whether it's hazardous or non-hazardous, and for unlimited hours. Okay? If they are 16 or 17 years old, they can work unlimited hours, but they can only do it in non-hazardous jobs. And then what becomes actually a hazardous job? Well, typically anything that as a result of their job could cause harm to them. And actually, there has been certain cases to where 16-year-olds were used as cooks, and they got burnt in the maybe the vat of grease or something like that, and there was some employment issues because that is a very sparse case. It's very rare that something like that happens. It's typically things that are considered to be they have a certain amount of risk to their health on a regular basis, okay, such as climbing ladders, such as using power tools. Those type of things can be things that can be hazardous. Of course, youth to 14 to 15-year-olds, they may work outside school hours in a various of non-manufacturing, and non-hazardous jobs. They cannot work, and as you see, there are some guidelines down at the bottom also. They can't work more than 3 hours per day on school days, and don't forget that includes Fridays. They are not allowed to work more than 18 hours per week during school weeks. They may not work more than 8 hours a day on non-school days. No more than 40 hours per week when school is not in session, so that's like on Christmas break and summer breaks. And above, this is one that is oftentimes forgotten by employers, is they cannot clock in before the hours of 7 a.m. in the morning or after 7 p.m. in the evening. Except from June 1st through Labor Day, when the permissible hours are extended to 9 p.m. So in other words, through the summertime, they can work until 9 o'clock, but they cannot start before 7. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're looking at hiring any person under the age of 18. Okay, we have to look now at some of the costs associated with hiring a new employee. One here is the employer cost. Now, there are, of course, if you have had a paycheck, or if you're currently collect a paycheck right now, and your employer takes taxes out of you, you know that the taxes are greater than what's in front of you. The taxes that are in front of you are what are the employer's costs. In other words, when you hire an employee, this is what you are responsible for in paying on behalf of that employee. The Social Security tax, which is 6.2% of the first $113,700. That's roughly half of the entire tax is what the employer is responsible for. Currently, the Medicare tax is 1.45%, or roughly half of the Medicare tax. The unemployment insurance, FICA, is 0.6% of the first $7,000, so which most employees, unless they're very part-time, make less than typically make rent. So typically, you just write a check for $42 per year per employee. And one of the more complicated taxes is the unemployment taxes. And of course that varies because that is related to some state issues also. It's based upon the calculated ratio. Comes up with basically a job description, a job character. It will be anywhere from 0.55, but it cannot be over 8.95% for the first 12,900 made. Okay. Without spending time in working this ratio with you, as most financial softwares, including QuickBooks and things like that, can all calculate this for you. And of course, there's all kinds of tax tables out there that can help you. Without getting into the ratio, it's basically a combination of the benefit ratio, the state experience factor, and the fund building rate, and it comes up with a total. If we were looking for an average in the state of Illinois, it's right around 7 to 7.5% is the average of the unemployment taxes paid. What I would recommend is, if you want more information about the unemployment tax, just Google the Illinois State Experience Factor and an employer's unemployment contribution rates, and they will explain to you and it will show you the formula that goes into explaining those ratios. Okay, workers' compensation. In the state of Illinois, if you have one employee on the payroll, you are required to have workers' compensation. There are some very slight and obscure exclusions to this particular law, but for the sake of this webinar, if you have one or more employees, you must provide workers' compensation. This also goes for self-employment. A sole proprietor is not necessarily required to have it, but if you are a corporation or an LLC and you are also an employee, if you're the owner or partner of the corporation or LLC and you're also an employee, then you would be required to have workers' compensation on yourself by law. Okay. The typical rates in Illinois range from 0.19 to 0.1495 of the total wage or salary base. And again, this is based on a job classification. And it is a factor of several different opinions and as well as some declared facts that are out there. This is based upon the riskiness of the particular job. Typically, it's 1% of every $100 in salary paid or wage paid, and then there's a multiplier that goes into effect of, like I said, of 0.0019 to 0.1495 in the state of Illinois currently. Keep in mind that the state of Illinois is third in the nation in the type or in the expense required for workers' compensation. So the cost of doing business in Illinois in comparison to workers' compensation is pretty high, per nationwide standards. Factors that determine it, that can lower your workers' compensation is if you have a safety plan in place. Okay, that can be a part of your employee handbook. Are there safety plans that you have in place? Do you require? Does OSHA come in and go over your equipment from time to time? What history do you have in applying for workman's compensation? If you're hiring your first employee, you have not had probably a case unless you're involved in another business at some point. So your history will be minimal, but your first claim can cause your rates to go up. If you offer health insurance to you and your employees, that can also bring down your workers' compensation rate. Of course, usage, and it goes along with history, and there's some other miscellaneous things that go along with it. But you can easily get a rate. There's tons of online places to insurance companies that you can get workers' comp quotations. Of course, we recommend just contact your local favorite insurance agent, and they can help you along with the process. Just as a side note, I've had this question asked before. Workers' compensation and business liability insurance are two separate insurance policies that all small businesses that have employees should have. Business liability is the liability risk management that the business takes on itself, and per se of negligence, per se of lawsuits and that type of thing. Workers' compensation is merely there for if your employee is hurt while in the performance of duties on the job. Now, benefits. Benefits are really all over the place in what they cost, because it depends on what you are particularly going to offer. Of course, in 2014, with the Affordable Care Act, a lot of the mandates kicking in, and a lot of and we're still on the wait and see as to what health insurance is going to cost small businesses and its employees. But under historically numbers, typically it costs you 7 to 10% of the salary or wages of your employees. That's typically what the health insurance benefit is going to cost. If you offer retirement, such as 401ks and that type of thing, that can be anywhere from 3 to 6%, depending on how much retirement benefit that you offer. Oftentimes, new employers, small businesses, forget that the benefits of paid leave, vacations, and sick time can add up very quickly, especially when you have minimal employees. Sometimes you don't have it's not possible for more than one employee to handle multiple duties if somebody's not on location. So there tends to be a lot of cost factors associated with that, and you've got to keep that in mind. The training and hidden costs. When I've canceled with business clients through the years, this is the one thing that is often forgot about. As a rule of thumb, under most jobs of hiring new employees, and again, that's with minimal experience in particular your industry or minimal experience with your company, of course, it takes 3 to 6 months on the job for their productive value comes to 100%. So it's kind of a tiered approach. Typically, when they start in week 1, they're only at maybe 5 to 10% of their productive value. By the end of the month, they may be up to 25%. There's some learning curves that go along with learning the job, learning how to perform the job, learning the relationships that go along with the job, whether it be vendor, customers, other employees that might be there. Okay, there's all kinds of things that factor into the productivity of an employee. And of course, is there anybody available to train them? If you are a new employer, it may be your job to train new employees. Do you have time in your day? Do you have to do you keep the 8 to 5 type per se doors open, and then you pay your employee to stay after work and you train them after hours? I see that a lot in young startup companies as to when the employees are going to get trained. Do you have to send them to training sessions? All these type of things factor in to the costs of training new employees. And don't forget that every new employee needs their own set of equipment, furniture, and software in order for them to perform their duties. So there are a lot of times hidden costs, and it's good to etch those out before you hire your first employees and think it through. What am I forgetting? What is out there? And what are they going to need in order to perform at the peak level for my company? Whenever we look at the overall cost of employees, take your salary or wage, total it up for your company, and add anywhere, multiply that by 30% to 100%. In certain situations, especially companies, I worked with a tech company last summer. They were wanting to attract a very specific type of individual to work in their company. They had specific software and programming training that only a handful of people across the nation actually had, and they had to go out into basically a nationwide search to bring this particular individual in. As you can imagine, the salary for this person was quite extensive. It was over $100,000. Actually, it came in around $115,000. When the company got through with the negotiation process, and because of the competitiveness of this particular individual, there was an additional $100,000 in benefit package, and that was spread across health benefits, as well as a personal company vehicle, as well as time off, as well as stock ownership in the company. So employment costs above and beyond the wage or salary can be quite extensive, and it's up to you to do the math on those before you hire your first employee, using some of the data that I've provided here with you today. So now, if we've gotten through all the cost factors of the particular business, and we've looked at some of the legal ramifications, Now it's time to go into the recruiting process. Now, if you're in where you're going to be hiring locally, of course you have to consider where are you going to attract these people at. Are you going to put help wanted ads in the local paper? Going to put it on a website? Going to go down to the local employment security office and get job postings? I recommend that you define what type of job that you are hiring for. I recommend that you reach out as to many venues as you possibly can. A lot of times I work with new employees and they are new employers, and they have maybe a particular person in mind that they would like to bring in to work for the company. That is all well and good. Of course, there's a potential that the relationship is there, and you can move forward to this. I would recommend that even before you do that, before you bring in somebody to work, that you go through the recruitment process. One, interview this particular person that is eligible for the job and somebody that you have in mind, and then go out for resumes and go and try to recruit from outside, just to ensure that you're getting the best person available. It also demonstrates to your new employees that they were picked as a part of a selection process and not just because that you knew them. It also gives you the experience as well as the practice of hiring your next employee. I work with a lot of startup companies, work with companies of various age and experience level in the marketplace. One thing that I see pretty negligible of is an accurate and accessible employee handbook, an up-to-date and current employee handbook. I recommend that if you have one employee or an infinite amount of employees, that you have an employee handbook. You can Google employee handbook and come up with dozens and dozens and hundreds, if not even thousands, of samples of employee handbooks across the internet. You can look at any one of these, download them, tweak it to fit your needs, print it out, and you have an employee handbook. It's a great place to get started. It's a great place that at least that you have something available. An employee handbook not only governs you as you go through the hiring process, but it allows you, in order to dismiss an employee at a much easier and ready pace, because it's outlined in the employee handbook as to how the process should take place. I find with new employers or small employers, employers that only employ 3, 4, 5, 10 people, that they tend to be paying unemployment insurance benefits to previous employees, and the employees could have been fired, could have been let go, any number of reasons. But from the employer's point of view, they felt that that they should not have to pay that benefit after this employee is left. And quite frankly, the Illinois Department of Employment Security, if you do not have a personnel policy in place, an employee handbook in place, if you did not follow legal and optimal dismissal procedures for an employee, the Department of Employment Security is always going to file in favor of the former employee, and that means that you will be out costs. Okay, so I recommend that you have an employee handbook, and I recommend that you include some of the type of things that are in that I've got bulleted for you in front of me, of the type of policies to have. The anti-harassment policy, at-will employment, drug and alcohol testing, background check policy, it's a two-way street. It not only protects you from the bringing in an employee that could jeopardize your work environment based upon some outside issues or some personal issues that the employee might have, but it also gives some protection to the employee that they can feel safe working in the environment that you are providing for them. Next, I recommend that when you go out for employment, no matter how small you are, and especially even for your first employee all the way to your last employee that you ever hire, make sure that you have a good and accurate job description. A job description should have the job title. If it's administrative assistant, okay. Executive administrative assistant, okay. But make sure the job title fits what the requirements of the job will be. It should also say where the job will be based at. It should not. I find that as a reason to why a lot of employees from time to time become disgruntled with their employer employment is because they have to be places that they didn't contract for whenever they took the job. So where are they based at? Are they going to be in the office, or is there expected travel? And if so, where, and approximately how much time out of the year would that be? Who does the position report to? If it's to you, list it in there. If it's the owner of the company, that's fine. If there's other managers, list that in there. A job purpose summary, keep that to one sentence. Specifically say what it is in one sentence that the person is responsible for doing. Succinct is always better on these. Then list out the key responsibilities and accountabilities. In other words, what are the duties? Got on this slide here for you, 8 to 15 numbered points is great. Don't hold yourself to it. If you need less or more, that's great. But mostly when I see job descriptions, if they've got a dozen, 10 or a dozen or so, something like that, it's pretty. It tells me that probably the duties for that potential employer are outlined pretty well there. Okay. What else are they going to have to do? What is the scope and scale of their particular job? Okay. Are they going to have to deal with other staff, customers? What are they going to have a territory that they have to manage? Is there products that they oversee? Is there specific equipment that they're going to need? So for instance, if they are going to be doing a lot of computer work, list that they're going to have familiarity with a desktop computer. Of course, if that's Mac, put that in there. That is, of course, a requirement also that I would recommend. And, of course, any software that you're going to have them have access to and expect them to learn on. It's very important then that you have that all taken care of and listed in the job description. And of course, date it and other relevant internal references on there. Okay, so any other, if you can put on here, if you want to put salary range, you can do that. It's not necessary, but say when when the employee is expected to be hired by, the date, and of course the starting time after the hire date. I like to break down potential job candidates into 4 different types: the technical, managerial, entrepreneurial, and visionary. Depending on what type of job that you're hiring for, you want to look for these particular characteristics from a potential employee. I have seen, especially when hiring young administrative assistants. Let's take this as a job, and this is something fresh in my mind. Just last week was working with an employer that they were wanting to hire an administrative assistant. Well, during the interview process, they hired a young college graduate. Of course, it wasn't a graduate in office management or anything like that. It was a degree that was very liberal in nature, and this particular young individual was quite a dreamer and wanted to generate a lot of ideas and wanted to say how they were going to create and redo the office management system. Well, the employer was very enthralled with this. This happened just last Monday. And by the end of the week, they'd hired this person, came into work the following day, and has already disrupted the office work environment there because this person was hired to be very technical in nature, to be very detail-oriented, to analyze the office situation and follow existing processes and not change those processes. And basically what happened is they hired somebody that at this young age and with the particular experience and education background from their college years was very visionary. and that visionary just did not welcome word in technical, and I fear that this person probably will not be around, will not be allowed to work in this position much longer because of how disruptive it is. So you need to make sure that when you're coming up with your job description and you're coming up with the roles and responsibilities, that you look for characteristics in a potential employee that match what needs to be done from that point of view. And just to review that, we've talked about technical, managerial, basically a strong leader, and they may see processes, but they improve on them and keep the group operating. Okay. Entrepreneurial thinker is somebody that makes a quick decision and doesn't have to have all the facts. They work well under pressure. I typically say that when you're looking to hire a salesperson or a sales staff, they need to be entrepreneurial in their thinking. And then lastly, a visionary, a strategic thinker, an idea generator. This is when maybe you're bringing in a complete new process, bringing in a new product line, offering a new service. This is the type of person you would want to look for to design this for the company so that they can have ownership in it and have the creative ability to move forward with what they see. Make sure that you have your interview questions all lined out. Got 10 questions here in front of you that are very straightforward and should be a part of every single interview process that you have out there. What is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? How do you handle stress under pressure? Describe to me a particular situation of a project, a difficult project, and how you overcame the problems associated with that. How do you evaluate success? Give me specific examples of how you have been successful and how you knew that you were. Why are you leaving your current job? How come you want to work for me? Why should I hire you? What are your goals for the future? And of course, always an open-ended question. Just tell me more about yourself that we haven't covered already. If you get those 10 questions answered, along with details about any specifics that you may need for the job, you're going to have a real good understanding how they answer these questions if that employee is a good candidate for the position that you are offering. Now, once you hire, make sure you put the right person in the right seat. Make sure you have matched up the candidate's skills and experience with the task at hand. All too often, especially from a small company, I hear this from employers all the time. There just wasn't a good pool of candidates. I just couldn't find the right person. It just doesn't seem like anybody wanted to work for me. Well, probably there's a variety of reasons, and I always bring it back to the employer first and try to deflect the blame instead of on the employee market, the potential candidate market, and reflect it back on yourself. Are you offering a salary and compensation package that can attract the type of person that you're looking for? Are you looking for somebody that is has a lot more qualifications than what this job actually needs? Are you sure that you understand the job description, or are you looking for a catch-all person just to pick up the slack around your small business? Okay, so you want to be very specific with yourself, and you want to outline exactly what you're looking for. You want to make sure that if you've got several candidates you're interviewing, ask the same questions of every single one of them. It's easy in an interview process to get sidetracked. The candidate sometimes is nervous, sometimes they're over talking, they're talking very fast, and they may want to take the interview in the direction that they see in their mind. Make sure that you keep the interview focused, have the questions prepared, and collect the answers as you go through the process. With small employees, with small companies, sometimes you have the ability to do this better than larger employers. Create a test or tryout session. Bring them actually in. Let them work with you or around you for a day or an afternoon or whatever that might take, so that you can actually see them in the work setting and see how that they perform. Get all of your ducks in a row. If you've never hired an employee, you need to make sure that you have these items in place. First off, you have to have a federal employer identification number. If you are a corporation or an LLC, you already have this. If you're a sole proprietor, you may or may not have this. Just make sure that you have a FIN number, a federal employer identification number. You can download or you can actually do it online at irs.gov. Just search their website for the appropriate address. You need to register with the Illinois Department of Employment Security. You can do so on the website in front of you to indicate that you are wanting to take on employees. Get your workers' compensation insurance before you ever hire, just so that it kicks in, or at least have it ready to kick in the day that you do hire, but have your insurance agent selected and the policy selected that you are going to go with. Have your payroll system set up before you have an employee on track. That can either be QuickBooks, or if you contract out to an accountant or bookkeeper, it's fine. Just make sure that you have the system set up and not have to scrounge around the first week or two when a pay period comes around and figure out how to get that employee paid and legally doing so. Have each employee fill out the IRS W-4 so that you can declare what kind of withholding that they want for their taxes. And of course, that form can be downloaded from irs.gov also. Don't forget, have them fill out the I-9 employment eligibility verification form. You can get that at the uscis.gov website, and then once you collect that information, you can go back to that same website at the address in front of you. It's the e-verify portion of the website, and you can put the information in, and you get a very quick turnaround. They'll let you know if that employee is eligible or not. Then when you actually, after you have got the new employee on hire, you have to go to the Illinois Department of Employment Security website. You can go online and put all the information in about the employer so that they are legally ready to work. And of course, don't forget to poster up. There's several posters that are required by the Federal Department of Labor. You can collect all of those and see which ones that you are required to have at this particular website. It's just a little survey that you take, and it'll tell you which posters that you must have. And if you have offered any or will offer any employee benefits, make sure those are all set up and ready to go the day that the employee starts their first day of work. And last but not least, then you have to manage your employees. The SBA recommends 7 ways to keep employees happy and motivated. Show appreciation for a job well done. If you're a small business and you have single digits or just a handful of employees that work for you, this should not be difficult for you to do. You work with them on a regular basis. You see them around the office. You have meetings with them, and make sure that you send accolades when they are performing well or above expectations. Involve employees in the decision making. Just makes your company better. Don't believe that you now have hired an employee, gain some of that benefit back in some of their decision-making abilities. Contribute to their social environment by having your company participate in the surrounding community. In other words, show how your business and the employees are, show how the employees are connected to the business and how the businesses are connected to the community. Now, this community can be your industry community, or it literally can be the community in which the brick and mortar building is where you operate from. So use it as you may, but show that it's part of a more that the business is part of a larger network, and that you want employees involved in all aspects of this. Be concerned when employees' health and well-being is at stake. Let them listen to anything that they have to say about family issues or their personal issues. Not only does it give you insight on maybe their performance and their way from the job time, but it's also going to show that you care about their personal lives. Show loyalty to your team, because you expect loyalty to your on the same team. Be comfortable and efficient in your work environment, and respect all the members of your company. If these 7 guidelines are felt, there's tons of books written on how to manage and how to get along with employees and how to make employees better. But quite frankly, if you adhere to these 7 guidelines, your employees will want to work hard for you, and they will be happy doing so. Here's several perks that won't break the bank. Some of the tangible things. All the employee recognition. Put their name up on Facebook. Put their name in the social medias. Put their name in the local newspaper. Put it in the company newsletter. Let your vendors know about it. Let them know when you have a great employee working for you and what they did that was exemplary. Give them greater responsibilities. This is probably the hardest thing that I work with employers on. Employers will often say, oh, all they want is just to be compensated more. They want more money, but I can't afford to pay them more money. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes they just want to feel like they're more. They have that you trust them more to work in the environment that they're hired. Add responsibilities to their job description, of course, with their consideration. Increase the flexibility. You know, if they need time away to deal with family situations, if they need to arrive late certain days, or leave early certain days, or take a shorter or longer lunch hour, be flexible as you possibly can until you see that's being abused by the employee, and try to the flexibility oftentimes will help keep the employee with you as opposed to going somewhere else. Offer business travel. This is really great with young, new employees that are new in the work environment. They love to travel. I've got a friend whose daughter, she's graduated college a couple of years ago. She's early 20s, moved to a big city away from a small rural community. And the greatest part of her, funnest part of her job is they send her to Las Vegas, they send her to New York, they send her to Louisiana or New Orleans to trade shows from time to time. She has a great time. She gets to see places that she has never seen before, and she feels that that she's performing her job duties there also. So offer that from time to time. Sometimes certain employees like to see that as a benefit. Don't forget about all the intangible stuff that you can do. Look for ways to give greater job satisfaction. Make sure that you respect your employees. Be very clear in what you communicate. When you expect something done, articulate it very well and follow through to see that it gets done. Of course, the relaxed and flexible work environment. All these are things that you can, perks that you can give that don't cause very much money, if any. And last but not least, don't forget to try to keep your work environment fun. Look for I've just given a few, 6 little ideas up here, but you can definitely come up with, I'm sure, many, many more. Just look for ways to show that your employees that they are special, and make it a fun thing to give them. Got an employee that from time to time there's it's in a town where there is a day spa, which is only about a block away from this particular company. The owner of the company goes to the day spa and gets several day passes or hour passes for massages and just different things that comfort individuals, and brings those and gives them out to the employees, a couple or 3 times a year, just to let them know how much he appreciates them. It's a fun day, and everybody can get away from the job and have a day at the spa. It's up to you. Okay, this concludes today's webinar. There's tons of contact information for me on the right. For the Small Business Development Center at the Illinois Eastern Community Colleges, their contact information is on the left. We both will look forward to hearing from you either about this webinar or other issues concerning your small business. Are there any questions at this time that I could answer? Okay. As a result of you signing up for this webinar, you will be on our mailing list. We've got a couple of more coming up in this Competitive Advantage series. They will be finished up first of next year. So I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, and you have a great day. Thank you for joining In Alliance in Training webinar sponsored by the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Illinois Eastern community colleges.